small alien girl sat alone in the corner of a cold metal cage. Her skin was pale and thin, her eyes dark with fear. She had no shoes, no blanket, and no name. Around her, other slaves were being sold one by one. Shouting voices, loud footsteps, and angry traders filled the air. But no one looked at her. She was too quiet, too broken. She held her arms around her knees and whispered the same words again and again. "Don't touch me. I'm dirty. I'm useless." The slave trader laughed when someone passed by. "Her cage. That one trash. We feed her just enough to keep her breathing." People didn't stop to ask about her. Some laughed, some turned away in disgust. She had been in that cage for months, maybe longer. She had forgotten the taste of real food. She didn't remember the feeling of soft clothes or warm hands. Her world was only pain, cold, and silence. But then, something different happened. Human man stepped into the market. He was tall, calm, and quiet. He wore simple clothes and looked around without speaking. His name was Daniel. He wasn't like the others. He didn't look at the strong fighters or the beautiful servants. He walked slowly, studying every cage, and then he saw her. She didn't look back. Her head stayed down, her arms still holding her knees. But something about her caught his attention. Maybe it was her stillness, maybe it was the sadness in the air around her. Daniel stopped in front of her cage. "How much for her?" he asked. The trader looked surprised. "Her? You want that thing?" He laughed. "She's not even worth feeding. Give me 1 credit and she's yours." "1 credit?" Daniel asked again. The trader shrugged. "I'd give her for free, but I hate giving charity." Daniel reached into his pocket and gave the man a credit coin. The gate opened with a loud click. The trader kicked the cage and shouted, "Get up! Someone's crazy enough to take you." The girl didn't move. Daniel stepped inside. Slowly, gently, he knelt in front of her. "Hey," he said softly. "It's okay. I won't hurt you." Her body shook. Her arms held tighter around herself. "Don't touch me," she whispered. "I'm dirty. I'm shameful." Daniel didn't touch her. He sat beside her in silence. A few moments passed, then he said, "Let's go. You don't have to stay in this place anymore." She still didn't look up, but slowly, painfully, she moved to her feet. Her legs were weak. Daniel didn't grab her. He just stood beside her, ready to help if she fell. They walked together, one step at a time through the market. People stared. Some laughed, others whispered. A few shook their heads. A human with that thing? Why waste his time? Daniel didn't respond. He led her to his ship, a small old vessel parked just outside the market. The ramp opened, warm light spilled out. Inside, it smelled like food and soap. The girl stopped at the edge of the ramp. Her hands shook. "I can't go in," she whispered. "I'll make it dirty." Daniel looked at her. "Then I'll clean it again, come in." She looked at him for the first time. Her eyes were large, filled with fear and something else. Confusion. No one had ever said such things to her before. Inside the ship, he showed her a small room. There was a bed, a clean towel, and a bowl of warm soup waiting. She stared at it like it was magic. "This is for me?" she asked. "Yes," Daniel said. "You can sleep, you can eat. You are safe now." Tears filled her eyes. She didn't touch the soup. She didn't sit on the bed. She just stood there staring at everything. "Why?" she asked softly. "Why are you doing this?" Daniel smiled. "Because someone should have done it a long time ago." She didn't understand. Her mind couldn't believe it. But her heart began to feel something. A small, quiet hope. Maybe, just maybe. She wasn't trash. She sat on the floor, far from the bed. She didn't eat the soup. But for the first time in years, she slept without fear. Daniel closed the door and let her be. That night, the ship floated through space. Inside, one broken girl began her journey to healing, and one human stayed nearby, ready to show her that she was not dirty, not useless, not shameful. She was precious. She refused to look at him. The next morning, the ship was silent. Daniel stood outside the girl's door holding a small tray with warm food and water. He didn't knock. He just waited. After a few moments, the door opened slowly. The girl stood there, her eyes low, her arms crossed tight across her chest. She hadn't touched the soup from last night. She hadn't sat on the bed. She had slept on the floor, curled like a child afraid of monsters. Daniel smiled gently and placed the tray near the door. "You don't have to talk," he said. "You don't have to thank me. Just eat when you're ready." She didn't answer. She didn't move. Her eyes stayed locked on the floor. Her feet were bare, bruised. Her lips were dry. She looked like a ghost. Silent, invisible, forgotten. Later that day, Daniel checked the room again. The tray was empty. The soup was gone, but the girl had returned to the floor. She didn't use the soft bed, not even the blanket. She acted like she didn't belong, like touching comfort would break it. That evening, Daniel sat on the floor just outside her room. He leaned against the wall and began talking. Not to her, but just to the air. "I had a little sister once," he said. "She used to cry in her sleep. I'd sit by her door so she wouldn't feel alone. Maybe that's why I'm here now." Inside, the girl heard every word. Her heart beat faster. No one had ever spoken to her like that. No one had ever cared where she slept or if she cried. Days passed slowly. The girl watched Daniel from a distance. He didn't try to touch her. He didn't shout. He didn't ask her name. He only left food, gave space, and stayed close enough to be near, but far enough to not scare her. One night, she had a nightmare. Her body shook. Her voice cried out in her sleep. Her hands clawed the floor as if trying to escape something only she could see. Daniel ran in but didn't come too close. "Hey," he said calmly. "You're safe now. You're not in that place anymore." She woke with wide eyes, breathing fast. Sweat ran down her face. She looked at him, frozen in fear, like a small animal that expected pain. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said gently. She backed away into the corner. Her voice broke. "Don't lie. Everyone says that, but they still hurt me." "I'm not like them," Daniel said, his voice steady. "I didn't buy you to own you. I just didn't want to leave you there." Her hands covered her face. "I don't understand you. You don't have to," he replied. "You only need to breathe." She didn't believe him. Not yet. But she didn't scream again that night. The next morning, something changed. The girl touched the edge of the bed, just with her fingers. Then she sat on it for 1 second, just one, and stood up quickly like she had done something wrong. But Daniel saw it. He didn't say anything. He just smiled and made more soup. Later, he placed a mirror on the wall near her room. When she passed by, she paused. She looked into it and stared at her reflection. Her hair was dirty, her face thin. She touched her cheek slowly. "I look broken," she whispered. Daniel stood behind her. "No, you look like someone who survived." She turned away quickly. "Don't say that. I'm not strong. I'm nothing." Daniel shook his head. "You're still here, aren't you? That means something." She didn't answer, but that night, she sat on the bed for 10 full minutes before returning to the floor. Something inside her was beginning to shift. Small and quiet, but real. She didn't trust yet. She didn't smile. But for the first time, she looked at Daniel. Not fully, not with comfort, but she looked. And when she did, her eyes didn't show fear. They showed confusion, wonder, and a tiny spark of hope. The marks of the past, the girl stood by the small mirror again. Her fingers moved slowly across her cheek, then down her neck, stopping just above her collar. There were scars there, faint but real. She touched them gently as if reminding herself that they were not a dream. Daniel saw her standing there, silent, frozen in thought. He didn't speak. He just watched from a distance, letting her have her moment. Later that day, Daniel was working on some repairs in the back of the ship. The sound of tools clinking echoed softly. The girl sat near the hallway, not too close, but close enough to listen. She didn't understand what he was fixing, but his calm focus made her feel oddly safe. She rested her head against the wall, and for a moment she closed her eyes, not from fear, but peace. But that night, everything changed. She screamed in her sleep again, louder than before. Her voice echoed through the ship. Daniel rushed to her room. She was curled in a tight ball, her back exposed as her old torn shirt had slipped down. For the first time, Daniel saw them. The marks, burns, cuts, deep scars. Some looked like letters, some like symbols. Numbers were carved into her skin. She was shaking, her breath fast and broken. Daniel didn't speak. He took a blanket and gently covered her shoulders. She woke up with a sharp gasp. Her eyes widened as she realized her shirt had moved. She pulled it up in panic and backed away to the corner. "You saw them?" she whispered, ashamed. Daniel nodded slowly. "Yes, I saw." "You think I'm disgusting now," she said. "Everyone did when they saw." "No," he replied firmly. "I think you're strong." She looked up in shock. "Strong? I was branded like a beast, sold, beaten, thrown in a cage. That's not strength, that's filth." Daniel sat down, careful to stay a few feet away. "Scars mean you lived through something. They're not weakness, they're proof that you survived." The girl had no words. No one had ever said something like that to her. "Why do you keep saying nice things to me?" she asked softly. "What do you want?" "Nothing," he said. "I just want you to heal." She stared at him for a long moment. Then she spoke quietly, as if testing him. "They hurt me because I cried, because I was small. They told me if I screamed, they'd cut deeper. So I learned to be quiet. But it didn't stop." Daniel's eyes filled with sadness, but he kept his voice steady. "You don't have to be quiet anymore." Her lips trembled. She looked down at her hands, small, thin, trembling. "Sometimes, I wonder why I'm still alive." Daniel leaned forward just a little. "Because your story isn't over yet." For the first time, she didn't move away when he spoke. Her breathing slowed. The silence between them wasn't heavy like before. It felt different now, gentler, almost comforting. The next day, she sat in the dining area while Daniel cooked. She didn't speak, but she watched him closely. When he offered her a plate of food, she took it with both hands. She didn't eat fast like before. She took slow bites, as if learning to enjoy the taste again. She looked at him while chewing and said, "Do I really look like someone who can heal?" He smiled softly. "You already are." She didn't know how to answer that, so she just kept eating. That night, she asked him something she had never asked anyone. "What's your name?" "Daniel," he said. She repeated it slowly. "Daniel?" He smiled again. "And you?" "What's your name?" She looked away. "I don't have one. They never gave me one." "Then maybe it's time you choose one," he said. "Or let me help you find one." She thought for a moment. "I'll wait. Maybe when I feel more like a person." Daniel nodded. "Whenever you're ready." As she lay in bed, this time on the mattress with the blanket covering her fully, she stared at the ceiling. Her fingers touched her scars once more. But this time, she didn't cry. For the first time in her life, she felt something small, but powerful grow inside her. Not fear, not pain, but the first warm spark of worth. Learning to breathe again. The ship landed on a quiet green moon, far from any cities or slave markets. The sky was soft blue, with two suns glowing gently overhead. Trees danced in the wind and flowers with strange colors swayed like music. The girl stood at the open ramp, afraid to step down. Her bare feet hovered above the grass. She looked at Daniel. "Are we allowed to be here?" she asked. He nodded. "There's no one around. Just nature. Just peace." She stepped down slowly, one foot then the other. The grass felt strange under her skin, cool, soft, alive. She bent down and touched it. Her fingers trembled. Then she looked up at the sky, and for the first time in years, she took a deep breath without fear. "Smells clean," she whispered. Daniel smiled. "That's freedom." They walked through a quiet field. Birds flew overhead, and small, glowing bugs danced near the flowers. The girl looked around with wide eyes. Her hands stayed close to her chest, unsure, nervous but not terrified. They reached a quiet hill and sat under a tall tree. The girl leaned against the trunk but didn't relax fully. She kept looking over her shoulder like someone would appear and drag her back to the cage. Daniel noticed but didn't say anything. He just picked a small fruit from a branch and handed it to her. She took it carefully. "You're always kind, even when I don't say thank you." "You don't need to thank me," Daniel said. "You just need to live." She looked down. "I don't know how." "You'll learn." They sat, in silence, the wind brushing through their hair. For the first time, the silence between them didn't feel sad. It felt healing, but peace didn't last forever. A few hours later, they returned to a small outpost for supplies. As they walked through the market, an alien merchant stared at the girl and laughed loudly. "Hey, isn't that one of the throwaways from the slave pens?" he shouted. "Did the human pick up garbage now?" People around turned to look. The girl froze. Her chest tightened. Her eyes went wide with panic. Her feet stopped moving. Her body remembered everything. Chains, kicks, names, the cold floor. She couldn't breathe. Daniel stepped in front of her. His face was calm, but his voice was sharp. "You don't talk to her like that," he said. The alien merchant smirked. "Oh, I forgot. You humans love fixing broken toys." Daniel didn't move. "She is not a toy. She is not garbage. Say another word and you'll regret it." The merchant backed off. "Fine, keep your trash." The girl stood behind Daniel, silent, shaking. He turned to her. "Are you okay?" She didn't answer. Her hands covered her face. Her breath came in fast, painful gasps. Daniel didn't touch her, but he stayed close. Back on the ship, she sat in a corner, knees to her chest, her body shaking. Daniel brought her warm tea and placed it beside her. He sat across the room and waited. Minutes passed. Then she spoke, quiet, broken. "Why did you stand up for me?" "Because you deserved it," he said. "But I didn't do anything." "You don't have to do anything to deserve respect." Tears rolled down her cheeks. "I don't understand. You will one day," Daniel said softly. She crawled toward the cup of tea and held it with both hands. She didn't drink it yet, just held it close like it gave her strength. Then, for the first time, she asked a question that came from a place of hope. "Do you really think I can become normal?" Daniel shook his head. "No, I don't think you'll become normal. I think you'll become you. And that's even better." She looked at him, her eyes confused but touched. That night she sat on the bed without fear. She touched her scars again but didn't hide them. She whispered to herself, "Maybe I'm not broken. Maybe I'm just healing." And outside, her room, Daniel sat by the door again, silent and steady, making sure that this time she never felt alone. The first smile. The girl was changing. Slowly, quietly, like a flower reaching toward the sun after too many dark seasons. She was learning to exist without fear. She still flinched when doors opened suddenly. She still froze when loud voices echoed through the halls of strange towns. But there were moments, small, rare moments, when something else showed in her eyes. Like the morning she entered the hall, kitchen and found Daniel humming to himself while making breakfast. She stood silently in the doorway. He turned, surprised, and smiled. "You're up early," he said. "I wanted to help," she replied in a soft voice, unsure if she had the right to offer. Daniel handed her a spoon. "Stir this." She took the spoon like it was something precious, something royal. She stirred slowly, carefully, her face focused. Daniel watched her, but said nothing. Then it happened. She smiled, only for a second. Only a soft curve of her lips. But Daniel saw it. His chest tightened. That small smile was more beautiful than any sunrise he had ever seen. She noticed him staring and quickly looked away. "Sorry. Don't be," he said gently. "You just made my whole day better." She didn't reply, but her hands didn't shake as much when she handed him the spoon. They ate breakfast together. No chains, no cage. Just food, sunlight through the window, and peace. But peace doesn't ask for permission to leave. That afternoon, Daniel needed supplies from a nearby port. He left the girl in the ship, locking the door from the outside, not to trap her, but to protect her. She watched him leave from the window. A part of her wanted to call him back, to ask him not to go. But she stayed silent. Hours passed. She cleaned the table. She organized the room. She even folded her blanket neatly. Then, someone knocked on the door. Her heart dropped. A sharp voice came from outside. "We tracked your ship, girl. We know you're in there." She froze. Slavers. They had found her. "No one's coming to save you," the voice said. "Your little human friend isn't here now. Open the door and make this easy." She backed away, shaking. Her legs hit the wall behind her. She slid to the floor and covered her ears, trying to block the voice, but the words still cut through. "You were born for the cage. You'll always belong to us." A loud crash shook the ship. The door was being forced open. Tears fell down her face. "He's not coming," she whispered to herself. "Why would he come? I'm not worth saving." But as she curled tighter into a ball, something deep inside her whispered back, "What if he does come?" And then, just before the door could be broken, a deafening sound rang out from above. Engines roared. A shadow moved across the glass. It was Daniel's ship. He was back. In seconds, weapons fired from the ship's defense system. The slavers outside screamed and ran. Daniel stormed inside, his face filled with rage and fear. He ran straight to her room. She was still shaking, curled up, whispering the same words. "I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to be trouble." But he didn't listen to her apologies. He dropped to his knees and pulled her into his arms. And this time, she didn't fight it. She cried in his chest. She clung to him like a drowning girl finally finding land. He held her tighter, whispering, "You're safe. I'm here. I won't let them take you." "But why?" she sobbed. "Why would you risk yourself? Why would you come back for someone like me?" "Because you're not someone like anything," Daniel said. "You're you, and that's reason enough." That night she slept in the bed with the blanket pulled all the way up, not to hide but to feel warm. Daniel sat just outside her room again, not to protect her like a bodyguard but to be near her like a friend. And when the lights dimmed, she whispered a few quiet words to herself, soft enough to disappear in the air. "Maybe I really am worth saving. I am not trash." The next morning, sunlight spilled through the ship's window panels. The girl sat at the edge of the bed, her feet touching the floor, her hands calm in her lap. She wasn't shaking. She wasn't hiding. She was just still. Daniel knocked lightly on the frame. "May I come in?" She nodded. He entered with 2 cups of warm tea. She accepted one without hesitation. They sat together in silence for a while, sipping slowly. Then she asked, Why did you really come back for me? Daniel turned to her. Because I promised myself I would never leave someone behind who didn't deserve to be forgotten. She looked down. They always said I was trash, worthless. I started to believe it. But when you showed up, I didn't know what to believe anymore. Daniel leaned forward. What do you believe now? She looked him in the eyes for the first time, fully and clearly. I don't know if I'm whole, but I don't think I'm trash anymore. Daniel smiled. That's a good start. But peace never stays for long. Later that day, while scanning the ship's system, Daniel discovered a tracking beacon, hidden deep in the engine bay. Someone had planted it, probably one of the slavers from before. Panic surged through him. They're coming again, he said. He turned to the girl. You have to stay inside. Lock the door. Don't open it. For anyone. But she shook her head. No, I won't hide again. Please, Daniel said. They're dangerous. You've seen what they can do. She stood, her back straighter than ever. I've been hiding my whole life. If they come, I won't run. Not this time. Daniel was silent for a moment. Then he nodded. And they prepared together. They moved the ship to a canyon on a nearby desert moon, a place with natural cover. Daniel set traps, rerouted power, and armed defense turrets. The girl helped. She knew how slavers thought. She told Daniel where they would likely enter, where they'd try to break in, and how long they'd wait before striking. She wasn't afraid anymore, and when the slaver ship finally appeared, dropping from the sky like a dark wound, she stood beside Daniel on the bridge. One of the slavers' voices came through the speakers. Give us the girl, human. She's ours. She always will be. The girl stepped forward and spoke into the mic. Her voice didn't shake. I am not yours. I was never yours. Laughter echoed back. You think you're strong now? We made you what you are. You belong in a cage. Daniel's jaw tightened, but the girl placed a hand on his arm. Let me speak. She pressed the button again. I don't belong in a cage. I don't belong to pain. I don't belong to you. I belong to myself now. And if you come near me again, you'll learn what it feels like to lose. The slavers responded with silence. Then, blasters charged. A fight began. The ship shook with blasts. Daniel manned the weapons. The girl, despite never being trained, helped with shields, reloading, and guiding him through quick escape routes. Together, they were no longer a victim and a rescuer. They were a team. When the last slaver ship exploded and the dust settled, Daniel slumped into his seat. We made it. The girl stood behind him, breathing hard. Her hair was a mess. Her arms were covered in dust and smoke. But her eyes were proud. You were amazing, Daniel said. She gave him a tired smile. So were you. That night they didn't speak much. They just sat in the quiet of the stars. But something had changed forever. She wasn't the same girl who cried in the cage, whispering that she was dirty. She wasn't the same girl who flinched at kindness or feared her own reflection. She was someone else now, someone stronger, someone free. And for the first time in her life, she believed it when she said softly to herself, I am not trash. A new name, a new life. The stars outside the ship looked brighter than ever. They weren't just cold lights in the sky anymore. To the girl, they felt like promises. Silent reminders that the universe was bigger than her pain, and that somewhere in it, she could begin again. She stood in front of the mirror, wearing the simple tunic Daniel had given her weeks ago. Her skin still showed scars, but they didn't look ugly anymore. They looked like stories. Proof that she had survived every terrible thing meant to break her. Daniel entered quietly. We'll be arriving on Earth soon. Earth, she repeated. The human home? He nodded. I want to show you something different. A place where no one owns anyone. She looked at him, her voice soft. Will people there stare at me? Maybe, Daniel said honestly. But not because you're broken, because you're strong and you're with me. She turned back to the mirror. I think I'm ready now. For what? For a name. Daniel smiled. Do you have one in mind? She thought for a moment, then whispered, Lena. It means light in my old language. My mother used to say it before they took her away. Daniel's eyes softened. Lena suits you. The next few days passed like a dream. On Earth, Daniel brought her to a small village where he grew up. People were kind, curious, respectful. Lena walked slowly, at first unsure of her place, but the children smiled at her. The elders greeted her, and for the first time no one looked at her like a thing. They looked at her like a person. Daniel gave her a room in his family's old house. He taught her how to plant flowers, how to make tea, how to read human writing. She worked in the garden every morning. She smiled more. She laughed once and then again. She even cried, but they were gentle tears, not the kind that came from fear. The kind that washed away what remained of the pain. One evening, a local woman visited with her daughter. The little girl stared at Lena, wide-eyed. Are you a star woman? She asked. Lena knelt down and smiled. No, but I've seen the stars very closely. The girl hugged her, and Lena didn't freeze. She didn't panic. She hugged her back. That night, Daniel sat beside her on the wooden porch. The sunset lit her face in gold. She looked peaceful, almost glowing. I never thought I'd have a life, she said. Not even in my dreams. I thought I would die in that cage. Daniel looked at her. And now? She took a deep breath. Now, I want to live, not just survive. Live. I want to help others like me. I want to tell them they're not trash, that they can heal. Daniel nodded slowly. You'd be good at that. Lena looked at him, her voice barely above a whisper. You were the first person who didn't look at me like I was broken. You held me like I was something precious. Because you are. She blinked fast, holding back tears. I don't know if I can ever repay you. You don't have to, Daniel said. But if you ever want someone to walk beside you, I'll be here. She reached for his hand. This time, not with fear, but with trust. And under the stars where her pain once lived, Lena smiled. A full, bright smile that belonged not to a slave, not to a victim, but to a girl reborn. The girl who once whispered, Don't touch me. I'm dirty, was gone. And in her place stood Lena, a survivor, a light and someone who finally knew her worth.